Last Minute Blues podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donny Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on your home of the St. Louis Blues, 101 ESPN.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast. We are live in the Jeff Burton studios. Alex Ferrario sitting right across from me. Jeremy Rutherford, I'm going to say, is out on assignment today.
Oh, man, that makes him sound professional, doesn't it?
I mean, because he really is.
Out on assignment.
Yeah. There's a presser at Enterprise Center today with Doug Armstrong, the last one, prior to the draft on Friday. So JR will be peppering Doug with question after question, which I'm sure Army absolutely loves.
As we learned from the podcast, he loves getting those opportunities to sit down and pepper them. But yeah, no, they always do that. And so 10 a.m. later on this afternoon, he's going to sit down and talk a little pre-draft on Friday, which we are at the week of the draft, Donnie.
And things have already started popping off. Now, I got to ask you this question for real. Do you have the alerts set on your phone so that if something goes down while we're recording, that you're able to catch it?
Yeah, I have the alerts from Friedman, Johnston, Merrick, Saravalli, and then there's a couple of others. I basically all the big names in Hockey Insiders, I have the alert set, so when they tweet.
So the bases are covered.
Bases are covered. So if you see me do this, Donnie.
I go think that it's going down, man.
I go bug-eyed. You know what just happened.
All right. So first and foremost, within the last 24 hours, an absolutely league-shaking freaking trade between the Ottawa Senators and the Florida Panthers, sending Brady Tkachuk to play with his brother in Florida. Holy-ish, what a massive deal. So the bits and pieces in which that I have read about this, and Alex, I want you to fill in the blanks, was that a couple of weeks ago, there was some form of meeting between the GM of the Ottawa Senators, who I believe is Steve Staios, and Brady Tkachuk. I think that it was pretty known after that meeting, or at that meeting, that in 2 years, when the Senator deal was up, Brady was gone. He was not going to be re-signing. This is not going to be where he was staying. So they made, Ottawa that is, the very tough decision to trade one of the NHL's superstars and Brady Tkachuk to go play in Florida with his brother. Now, out of the deal, they get 3 first-rounders. They get a second-rounder. So I just want to ask you a few things. One, what do you think of this deal for both sides? Now, obviously, I would think from Florida, you're thinking this is an absolute slam dunk in every way imaginable. If you're any team in the Eastern Conference yesterday, you threw up, is what I'm going to guess.
Pretty much.
But I want to know what you think about from all sides, from Florida, from Ottawa. What do you think about this?
So for Florida, I mean, it's exactly what you said. I mean, there's no losing that deal. You got Brady Tkachuk. You have, in my opinion, the best top 9 an NHL team has had in a really long time. Do you maybe go back to when the San Jose Sharks were kind of at their prime with Joe Thornton? I don't know the last time they've had that top 9. I mean, Brad Marchand is a third-line winger for that team when now you've got the Tkachuks as 2 second-liners. That team is stacked. And to only give up 3 first-round picks, one of them a top 10 protected pick, and the biggest one in that draft the trade was the 9th overall pick. And it makes total sense. If you're the Florida Panthers, you don't need the 9th overall pick. The moment they were bad and missed the playoffs and you saw them selecting in the top 10, you knew they weren't taking that pick. It's just a matter of who are they going to get with it. I thought it was going to be a goalie. I thought it was going to be Connor Hellebuck. I thought maybe Jordan Binnington was the appeal. But when they traded that Semeskovich to Seattle, I think it was.
Yeah, which was yesterday,
that was
late
Saturday.
Morning. Oh, it was Saturday.
It was Saturday.
Okay. I was thinking
when I think it may have been Saturday, maybe Sunday. But when it happened, the first thought was, what are they doing?
They're making room for something.
Because you go out there and you get another pick. And so at that point, it's okay, where are you going? And the Brady Tkachuk, that makes all the sense in the world. I mean, you think of everything that's happened with Tkachuk in Ottawa, from the really 4 nations, I guess you can go back to, but in all reality, the Olympics and the political stage with Donald Trump and Team USA getting booed in Canada, the national anthem getting booed in Canada. You kind of felt this thing was moving forward. And I know Brady Tkachuk said in the offseason, I want to be here. I think anybody who has a brain kind of knew it's like, look, this isn't going to go very long. And it's what Matthew did with Calgary, right? It was the like, look, I'm not re-signing here. I'm not asking a trade, but I am telling you that if you want to move me, I'm listening. I'm willing to listen. And that's where we've gotten the report of the 4 teams that were interested. So it's the ultimate win for Florida. It's capitalizing. I think he's got 2 years left at $8 million.
Which is nothing for that guy.
Not in this cap now that's going up.
Yeah.
But for 2 years to have that good of a roster, you try and go win 2 Stanley Cups if you're Florida and then reassess at that point. I will say for Florida, though, somebody's going to have to move out from that team. They only got like 17 players under contract, and they do not have a goaltender with like $7 million in cap space. So somebody is going to be moving out to bring in a goaltender.
And I want to get the Ottawa perspective here too. But what does that mean for Bob in Florida?
I don't think Bobrovsky's coming back. If that guy is asking for 6 to 8 years,
which he is,
with $10 million, I would imagine, is probably what he's looking at. They can't afford that.
Yeah.
And if I'm Florida, I don't know if I want to do that. As great as Bobrovsky is and won me a Stanley Cup, I don't know if I want to commit 6 years at that price, because that puts me in a real tight space. Not tight space with where the cap's going, but you don't want to commit to that to a 46-year-old goaltender. So I think something on their roster gets traded for a goaltender, which brings you back to the Binnington conversation. Do they look at Jordan Binnington? Do they have the pieces to go acquire him? That's the part that I'll be fascinated with. They've also got 4 goalies in Buffalo that they're probably going to try and move.
Yeah.
You've got some free agents that maybe they just go low risk and play well in front of them, or Jacob Markstrom's name's out there. So I think Florida's going to go out and target the goaltender via trade to open up cap space and bring somebody in to help them.
All right, so if you are an Ottawa Senators fan this morning, you're bummed out probably, but I'm getting the sort of vibe that maybe some of that fan base was not the biggest fan of Brady Tkachuk.
That's kind of where I'm at too. Like, you're bummed out because you feel as a fan you were lied to, right? Because all of the conversation from insiders, from national perspective, from Brady and Steve Staios themselves is we're not moving this guy. I mean, remember, their owner has like gone after other teams for, having conversations with them before any availability. And so like, there's probably frustration in that front, but I also look at it as like, I think people wanted Brady Tkachuk gone because of the political stage, because of the uncertainty and how that podcast that Brady did with Matthew and Keith didn't look too good. I think there's a sense of just let's part ways.
Yeah.
But the hard part is if you're Ottawa, like, you don't look better today. Like, you asked me what happened on there. You lost that trade.
Yeah.
You didn't get an NHL player back. Yeah, you got a 9th overall pick. You lost that trade. You always lose the trade of trading Brady Tkachuk. There's no winning that. So, like, from Ottawa, like, you were a playoff team last year. You've got a great core, but now there's a gaping hole on your roster. It's also why I would say it's a to be determined trade. Like, because I don't think they're selecting 9 and 25 and 32.
That was going to be my next question. Do you think that they're packaging this for a player?
They're going to go find a player to play and fill Brady Tkachuk's spot. Do they go after Matthew Nyes from Toronto? Replace a power forward with a 23-year-old power forward? I know the speculation now is that, they'll give a massive offer sheet to Jason Robertson.
Right.
I don't think Robertson signs with them, so the offer sheet doesn't really matter. Do they go after Jordan Kyrou? I mean, they've been tied to Jordan Kyrou's name for a year now, it feels like. So that's the other option. I don't think they're done yet.
They can't be.
They can't be done yet. You're not selecting 3 players where you're at as an organization. It's just a matter of who they acquire via trade. Because now you got the assets for it. You got a lot of centers that you can deal. You've got 3 first-round picks in this year's draft. You've got future picks that you can deal. Now, well, I guess 2, because remember, they can't trade the 32nd overall pick in this year's draft. The one that they were taken away for the whole Vegas trade situation.
That's right.
Then they were giving it back, and it's the 32nd pick. They can't move that. So they can only move 9 and 25. But you got a lot of weaponry to deal with if you want to go find a top line player or a top 6 player to bring in.
Boy, that's so fascinating, too, because I totally forgot that Ottawa not only made the playoffs, but in listening to a lot of hockey after the finals were over, there were people on the Carolina camp that said that Ottawa gave them the biggest run for their money out of anybody until Vegas, sort of meaning like, man, that Ottawa team was sort of right there on the cusp of being able to make some noise.
Well, remember, Brady was awful in that postseason for them. Like, he didn't get a point. I think he was a -2. Like, Brady was terrible in that series, and Carolina still said that was a tough series to play against. So that's the part that you're just not. That's the cup you're not refilling right now. Like, you've got to acquire a player, if you're Ottawa, that makes you feel like, okay, we've got a guy. Honestly, it's kind of similar to where the Blues are at right now. You've got to find a guy that's in the timeline of where Ottawa is with Stützle and Sanderson and Shabbat and all of these guys. But the problem is, how do you acquire that player when every team out there knows you want to acquire that guy?
Sure.
And Ottawa doesn't want to give up one of their centers of Pinto or Cousins. They don't want to give up the 9th overall pick. That's a top 10 pick. But if you want the player you want, that's how you're going to have to address it.
Was there a group of teams that Tkachuk had said that he would be traded to?
So the report is Vegas,
of course,
Carolina, Minnesota, and Florida. Oh. That was the report from Pierre LeBrun. Now, what LeBrun's reporting today on The Athletic was, and it sure seemed like there wasn't a, like, I'm only going to these 4 teams. I think it was, look, I'm willing to listen. These are the teams I'm probably likely to go to. But it seems like from what LeBrun's reporting is, the only spot he wants to go to is Florida. So, like, Florida, Vegas, Carolina, they're in there. I'm fine going there. But Florida's where I want to go and play with my brother Matthew, which makes a ton of sense. You know, when you look at the other 3 teams, I think everybody immediately goes to, oh, well, it's the no tax and it's the same teams. But it's the Team USA group. Vegas with Eichel. You've got Carolina, who I don't believe Seth Jarvis, or he's Canadian, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Carolina has a USA player on it, so maybe that's Slavin. And then you've got Minnesota with Guerin, Quinn Hughes, and Matt Boldy. So, like, they're going to teams that have the Team USA players, but this was always Florida. And I think there was speculation of this a year ago. It's like, yeah, he wants to play with his brother Matthew.
And just for my own brain, Brady Tkachuk, this seems like a silly thing that the words are about to come out of my mouth, but Brady Tkachuk would not fit into the Blues window as it stands right now.
Yeah,
I
think people are upset that the Blues weren't on that list, and I get it because you're a hometown kid. This is beyond hometown kid.
Hometown kid is tired of seeing his brother win and wants to go somewhere where he can do the same, and the Blues are not in that window yet.
They're not. Like, if the Blues were on that list, I truly believe they would have given a competitive offer and probably really had a good shot to acquire him.
Yeah.
But I don't think this was, he doesn't want to come play for his hometown. No, he wants to win a cup.
Yeah. He would have been taking a step back from Ottawa to come here,
How many playoff series has he been in? 2, I think, since he's been a member of the Ottawa Senators. 3, maybe?
Yeah.
So, this guy has not played in the playoffs. All he does every April is go watch his brother play in the playoffs, at least for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So, St. Louis just isn't at the spot. And you could be upset about that all you want, but it's the Blues are trying to get to that point.
Yep.
The way I heard somebody mention it yesterday, that if the Blues want Brady Tkachuk, you've got 2 years to build towards that because he's a free agent in 2 years. You've got to make yourself hey, we're ready to compete now. And then the allure of coming to St. Louis is there.
Absolutely.
But right now, you're coming to a team that missed the playoffs last year. So the other thing, though, that I will say about this, and I'm sure you agree with this, Donny, the biggest mistake that the Blues made was not getting Matthew. Because if you acquire Matthew, Brady's considering it at this point, and you're probably much more competitive. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of what happened at that time, but the original sin here was not acquiring Matthew when he was available, when St. Louis was on his preferred destination. You didn't get him. things unraveled, and now you're in where you're at. Because this was all about Brady playing with Matthew, in my opinion.
Man, oh man. I mean, just an absolutely fat. And then, like, from what I understand, Minnesota made a huge offer.
Yeah.
And so then that just, to me, means that Minnesota is, and maybe it doesn't necessarily mean this, but wouldn't you think that they are going to throw everything that they can in the Dylan Larkin basket and try to get Dylan Larkin into Minnesota now? Like, Bill Guerin is not done big fish hunting here in this particular offseason.
Dylan Larkin or Vincent Trocheck would be the two that I'd say they're probably going after now, because, like, if you think about it, the centers are starting to dwindle. Thomas's name is off the market. The minor league guys that we've talked about, I don't think other teams really want those. So you've got two guys to target. Now, Ottawa would be interesting to see if Pinto or Cousins is available. Can they acquire one of those players? But yeah, I would say probably those. Here's the thing, though, with Minnesota's big deal. Like, I think people see that and say, like, oh, so we always wanted to go to Ottawa. The big deal from Minnesota, their draft pick isn't in the top 10, and you're getting prospects back. Ottawa's just not in the market for prospects right now. You've got to win now.
Yep.
So what's the best asset to go acquire an NHL-ready player? A top 10 pick.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, you go to these teams like Seattle, or you go to Philadelphia, or, you know, you go to these teams that are on the back half, Buffalo maybe. You go acquire that NHL talent with a top 10 pick. Like, Minnesota was offering a goaltender and a center prospect, which is good, but it's not what Ottawa needs. So the draft picks do mean something.
And how does Minnesota, how does Florida, even with the cap going up the way that it is, how do they avoid having a top-heavy roster where they're lacking in that, you know, that it maybe sort of in the bottom six or in the bottom pair? How do they balance that sort of thing? Or do you just have so much star power that it kind of almost doesn't matter?
Well, I think that's what Florida's doing now. I mean, Florida also, you got to give them credit. They've got guys on steals of contracts. Like, if you think about it, Barkov, Reinhart, both Tkachuk boys, on top of their defenseman, who I'm blanking on right now, the Swedish guy that they got from Chicago, Seth Jones. They've got probably their top 9 and their defensemen all locked up, all under $9 million AAV. So, like, wow, you're in a perfect spot. Now, it's a lot of guys, and you're in the position now where you don't have goalies, and, you know, you're probably going to have to play. Like, if you get an injury, you're going to be playing either minor league guys, or you're going to have to play players down. So Florida's just going to be in a position that's like, look, we try and win 2 cups in the next 2 years, and then we'll address it after that. Minnesota's the one that's fascinating to me, because Minnesota's kind of in a cap crunch now. Like, they're not going to be able to bring back all of these forwards that they won. I think Zuccarello and Tarasenko, there's a chance that they can't bring both of them back because Kaprizov's making 17 mil. You've got Quinn Hughes, who's going to be up for a contract. So, like, they're going to be the ones that I'll be fascinated to see what it looks like in 2 to 3 years. Yeah, the cap's going up, but so is the price for players. And you've got to trade for great contracts, because you're not going to be able to go out there and sign free agents because you're in such a tight spot. And Vegas proved this, 2 years ago? Like, when you've got a lot of guys on big AAVs, if an injury happens, man, you're playing a guy down in the middle of the season, which is not an easy thing to do.
All right, so what do you, real quick, before we take a break here, and I want to talk about a couple Blues things in the next segment, but with Kaprizov making $17 million, and we talked about this last week on what we think Makar will make in a team-friendly deal with Colorado. Maybe he's somewhere around 15 or so. What does Quinn Hughes make in that deal? I mean, it just seems to me that he is worth almost as much as Kaprizov is, but you can't have two guys making $17 million on your team.
I think depending on what Cale Makar signs, you're going to see Quinn probably right around it. So let's say Cale signs at 15. I wonder if Quinn goes to 13, 14, to where it's team friendly, but it also gets him paid. I I'm more fascinated to see what the year and the length of it looks like, because like he wants to play with his brother, but does Bill Guerin think, well, I'll just get Jack Hughes from New Jersey in a couple of years? Because if New Jersey stinks, they're going to start trading guys out. Team USA guys are obviously telling teams I want out. So, I mean, I think Quinn Hughes probably stays long-term, but yeah, I mean, you're talking 13 or 14 mil, and then look at what Macklin Celebrini going to get. Celebrini might be 15 or 16 mil. And that's going to be, 2 years in the NHL on an entry-level deal, and you're making that amount of money?
And we're 2 years away from McDavid getting another deal.
Yep.
And he'll be the highest paid player in the league.
You got to think he's 18 plus.
18 plus, maybe he's even 20.
Austin Matthews is 2 years away, so he's going to probably get north of that. You're going into unprecedented area of the NHL. And honestly, you're seeing super teams put together now.
100%.
I'll be fascinated to see how NHL fans react to it. Do they start feeling like what baseball fans feel like with the Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
To where it's like, this is dumb, like this is annoying. And then how does the NHL respond to that?
I'm going to say this to you, and you're probably not going to love it, but when I saw that deal go down, and I know I'm a St. Louis guy, and I know the Tkachuks are St. Louis boys, but I was like, poof. That makes me not like that team.
Yep.
I get that they're going to be fantastic. I get all of those things. They are going to be tough to beat in the East, but I don't dig it.
Yep.
I don't dig it at all. And I'll be rooting for the teams that are looking to chop down the Giants out there, man.
Yep.
And the Blues are going to end up happening to be one of those teams. And let's take a break. Let's talk a bit about that. There's a couple of things going on with the Blues that I want to bring up as well. And we've got a bunch of emails too, so maybe we'll get to a couple of those at the end.
Maybe. We know how this goes.
We keep saying. We keep saying. All right. Taking a break, coming back, second segment of the Last Minute Blues podcast. All right, segment number 2 here, Last Minute Blues podcast. So we have seen, all of this movement here over the course of the last week or so, and it's going to continue to the draft on Friday. Alex, how, to me, it's more important than ever for the Blues to stay the course here with young players. I think now is the time that we continue to let these guys play, let them grow, let them figure out what we have, because we're not even close to being in a position where one trade or two trades kind of puts us up in that, top tier. So more than ever, I feel like it's time to draft these guys in the first round, whatever we're going to do on Friday, and continue to develop and continue to see what we have with what we have.
Now, see, that's interesting because I disagree, and I'll be really curious where you come out after. I think it's important to do what you're doing and not rush this, because you're right. You're nowhere near where Florida, Carolina, Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota. Like, those are your Stanley Cup contenders going into next season without question, and then more will take place between now and the start of the year. But as much as I think it's important to play those guys and develop and grow, I also think it's important to start advancing this growth. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I look at this and say, I don't think you should draft all 3 of those players. Okay. I don't think you should run it back with this roster that you had last year and just insert some of these younger guys. I think at some point you have to advance the development of these players. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say Justin Carbonneau and Otto Stenberg are on this team next year. Okay. Who's the center that's playing with them? Dvorsky and Pius Suter?
I was going to say Pius Suter was going to be my answer.
Dvorsky is important because you need to advance that development. Mm-hmm. Who's the winger that he's playing with that's advancing his development? Kyrou? Buchnevich? Neighbors? Like, Neighbors I could see, but I think it's important to go out there and add a little more experience to an area that you're weaker in so that you can continue to develop. I think it's important to go target a center that isn't a 32-year-old, but is somebody that is in the window of where you're at with your guys that can make you competitive, but also brings a little ability to develop those guys around. Like, you've got to bring some talent that can get the best out of Stenberg and Carbonneau and challenge Dvorsky rather than just say, Dvorsky, you're our number 2 center because there's nobody else. How'd that go for Logan Mailloux this year?
Yeah, you're
Where you
right.
told Mailloux, like, you're on the defense. And I'm not saying it's why he struggled, but they sent him down to the AHL to figure it out, and then he came back and got better. Like, I think you need a little more help on the offensive side. And so that's why, like, I've always said this offseason, you've got to upgrade the center position. You've got to go out there and find a guy that's not taking time away from Dvorsky, but challenging Dvorsky to better his game. Strengthen your center depth so that everybody else around that can improve. And that's where I would think they go.
So are you thinking like a 2B? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, as far as the center go, who are you thinking? What are you thinking?
So, I mean, the names that are out there are starting to really dwindle. Like, I've brought up Seattle in the past with Shane Wright or Matty Beniers. I don't think there's any ability to get those guys / interest in those players. Mason McTavish's name has been brought up. I'm very skeptical of Mason McTavish. I like Pinto from Ottawa.
Right.
I don't know what their appetite is to trade Pinto now that Brady Tkachuk's gone.
Especially now, right?
That's a 25-year-old guy who's signed for 6 years at $7 million, who's like a 50 to 60-point player. So, like, that would make sense. And I'll give you the one that we've talked about at BK and Ferrario that is a polarizing figure, and I have a feeling you're not going to like. Elias Pettersson from Vancouver.
Oof.
All right, so I'm going to have to sell this for people, Donny.
You're going to have to sell it for me, buddy, because we just haven't. You know what? And before you start, the ability on this guy seems to be off the charts.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's a friggin' knucklehead.
Yeah, well, and that's the concern right now. I mean, so the backstory for people that don't know, Pettersson with the Vancouver Canucks was a 100-point player, had a rough couple of years. The drama that developed from Vancouver
between him and JT
Miller, that they didn't like each other, and then his game dipped. They traded Miller. Everybody kind of turned into a rebuild that they're in now. So Vancouver radio, Rick DeWally brought this up on his show that, like, hey, there's a little bit more interest from Vancouver to eat some of his salary. And St. Louis has been sniffing around from Pettersson. And so it's like, okay, so if Vancouver's willing to eat money on this guy's making $11 million. If you get that down to, let's say, $8.5 million, he's 27 years old. He's had a 100-point and a 90-point season, but even the seasons that he hasn't put up a lot of points, minus the last 2 years, which has just been like, get him out of here, he's been a consistent 30-goal scorer for that team. The last 2 years have been ugly. But I'd argue that, yes, he might be a problem, which there's good reporting that, like, hey, this guy is a little bit of a head case from where he was at. How much of that was Vancouver causing him to be that way, right?
Okay.
Like Vancouver not having consistency in terms of leadership, front office people, the players around weren't great.
How many head coaches has he played for?
So you had Bruce Boudreau when he was first there, and there might have been somebody before Boudreau, but Boudreau was there, then Tocchet, then Adam Foote, and then their new coach that they're going to have this year.
So this will be five or
so
4.
They're going to have about 4 or 5 since he's been in the NHL.
And that is never, ever, ever good, especially when you're a young player in any sport.
Look at Nugent Hopkins with Edmonton. Like, he was that, everybody thought he was a bust.
Yeah.
Until McDavid came in, and, you know, like, McDavid changes things, but they were going through head coaches. So that's part of it. And my example is, remember Ryan O'Reilly? Ryan O'Reilly fell out of love with hockey in Buffalo, right? Had a bad year, got where he went to St. Louis and rejuvenated his career.
Yeah.
There's a chance that that could happen. And do you want to take a chance? I guess that's the question you really have to ask. The other thing into this is the new atmosphere to where you come to St. Louis, where you've got essentially Team Sweden in the National Hockey League with Steen and all of these Swedish players, but you're also not the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
Like, how much has that hurt him?
You can just be a player.
You just get to be the guy. Now, I think a lot of people are talking about him, but you're a smaller market than where Vancouver is. So that's the other factor into this. Like, you're taking a chance without question with him, but how much do you believe in the change of scenery that could help him? And are you willing to take on a guy for, let's say, $8.5 million for the next 6 years, who's 27 and has a 100-point potential? Or would you rather trade a lot of assets probably like a Parayko-esque, to go get a 23-year-old player, Mason McTavish, who's making almost the same amount of money, who has never been more than a 50-point player.
Right, who was far less
and
proven.
Bad defensively. Pettersson is a Selke Trophy candidate when he was at his best. So you got a guy that's got a one-timer on the power play, great on the penalty kill, very good offensively, and if he's engaged, one of the better centermen in the National Hockey League.
Are we just trading? Would we just be trading for a better version of Jordan Kyrou?
Yes.
Like that's as you're talking about all of the pluses and minuses when it comes to this guy, I'm hearing Jordan Kyrou, like just a different version of Jordan Kyrou. I mean, a better player, obviously, with the higher upside, that I know, but it seems like you talk about, change of scenery, wearing out sort of his welcome where he is, that sort of thing.
Now let me say this. I hated the idea of this like a while ago because I don't like the idea of bringing somebody in like this, Pettersson, to a team that's already a little fragile. Mm-hmm. And I question how much of a hard ass Jim Montgomery and Greg Cronin can be if that works for an Elias Pettersson.
Yep.
But I guess my retort to my own argument is he had a 100-point and a 90-point season under Rick Tocchet. And Rick Tockett's a hard ass.
Absolutely.
Now, it dissipated quickly, but that was a JT Miller problem. I guess I say JT Miller problem. It was a Pettersson problem with JT Miller. Some guys just don't mesh.
Yeah.
Now, to your Kyrou comp, I don't know if Kyrou's a head case. Kyrou's keeps to himself, goes about his business. Kyrou's not a guy that stirs up problems.
You're right. He just kind of wants to do his thing and kind of be left alone.
But the work ethic when they're on it, I guess, is the question that there's some similarities of where Pettersson's at versus where Kyrou's at. I don't know. To me, as much as I'm concerned, because if you acquire this, it's a no movement clause. He's making $8 million, and you're stuck with him because nobody's going to take him on unless you're paying him to go elsewhere.
And he's probably got 4 or 5 years left on that deal, right?
Six.
Oh,
yeah. So you got him for the same amount of time that you'd have Thomas and Buchnevich and Kyrou if you don't move Jordan Kyrou. But you're upgrading the position that is your weakest. He's 1 year older than Robert Thomas, so he is in that time frame. Yeah. He's locked up. You have to bet on, can we get the best out of him? And if there's one guy that I would trust, it would be Steen, who's got to have some very strong familiarity with his game from the Team Sweden aspect. Yeah. So I don't know if this even happens. Right. All I know is the rumor of them sniffing around from what the Vancouver perspective said. But man, the more I've denied this in the past, the more I look at what the other options are. Shane Pinto, Dylan Cousins, those guys would be at the top of my list. But if you're presenting me Pettersson at the same price as what McTavish is making or Shane Wright from Seattle, and by the way, the cost of acquiring that player is not going to be as much. You're talking maybe the 29th overall pick and a second-tier prospect. Would you rather trade that for Pettersson and go for upside, or trade Parayko or the 11th or the 15th pick and go get Mason McTavish and also not be happy with what he is?
Well, and I think for me, the trading of Colton Parayko, unless we are getting some kind of steady Eddie defenseman in that deal back in return,
and you're not,
isn't going to make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
No.
Because then you're just going to have two young, not rookies, but one rookie in Juracek, the other in Mayu, who's still pretty green.
And Lindstein.
Jeez, no, you can't. I just don't think that makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
I don't know. I find these arguments to be so unbelievably fascinating.
Agreed.
And I think it just goes into making me wonder what makes these players tick. And you could completely see Pettersson getting out of there, going somewhere else, feeling like he has this huge elephant off his back, and just going back to what he was before. I could absolutely see that. I just feel like that dude, withering away from a 100-point player and just never getting back to that. I just don't see that happening. No. I feel like it's got to be there somewhere for somebody.
And you're 27 years old.
Yeah, you're still a kid.
Look at the kid. You kind of are in the hockey world, but just look at the examples of guys that this has happened with. Trevor Zegras is a perfect example. Anaheim, this dude was done, right? Yeah. Didn't care, didn't want to play, went to Philadelphia to play for Rick Tocchet, who's a hard ass.
Yeah.
and went on to be one of their best players this past season. Like, there are plenty of examples of guys going elsewhere and getting that change of scenery, that fresh feeling, and can just go off. How many times have you or somebody that's listening worked with someone that you don't get along with, that you butt heads because you've got the same personality, you feel like you're the same person, you're both alphas, and you try and work together, and it's very difficult, right? One guy is a loud, boisterous individual. You're somebody that likes to go about his business, and you're both productive. You both feel like you're stars of the team, but you're both unhappy with each other. Like, that doesn't work. Like, It's hard. It's hard to work with somebody if you don't get along with them.
I don't know what that's. I wouldn't even know what that's like.
No, Donnie. It's impossible, Donnie.
Dude, I am just such a go with the flow guy in the work environment.
You are the most calm, level-headed individual that I've ever been around. That this doesn't apply to you.
I am so afraid that there is going to be lightning that is going to come out of the sky and through this building and kill me right here on camera.
Again, I'm not taking everything off of Pettersson's plate, and I'm not trying to justify this because, it makes sense for the Blues. I'm just trying to play out the scenarios. There's this real scenario that he is still a head case and comes here, isn't happy. He and Thomas don't mesh well, and then you're in the same problem, and you're like, now what do we do? And Thomas wants out. There's a chance that happens. And do you want to risk that chance? That's the part that I don't know. But there's also a chance that JT Miller was just a very difficult person to be around. Mm-hmm. Pettersson was a difficult person to be around, and they just didn't mesh well together. Is there a chance that you acquire Pettersson and give him a more casual playing scenario to where you're not the number one center, you're not the number one guy that everybody's expecting? Go out there and just do your business. 17 minutes a night, go about your business. Is there a scenario that guy who comes to a team that's run by Alex Steen, that has multiple Swedes on the roster, that just gets and comes in and just plays his game? Because if there's a chance that happens, is it worth the 29th overall pick to you?
I mean, yes. I mean, absolutely.
And
I think you've sold me, Ferrario.
And the start of our conversation, I think you need to advance this team. Pettersson advances this team.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
experience that steps in, that does maybe take some playing time away from Dalibor Dvorsky, but guess what? If Pettersson's game isn't up to the level that you need it to be, and Dvorsky becomes a next tier, what's the problem with having a Pettersson on your third line center?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely nothing. I mean, as far as when you're building these other super teams, that could just be the building of the Blues.
And remember, he's making $8 million in the scenario because Vancouver's eating some of this money. You had an $8 million player playing third line center free last year in Buchnevich. So when I try and look at it and you get that yellow legal pad out and you draw the column, the pros and the cons.
The pros and the cons list.
The cons are bad because if it goes bad, you are in a worse spot and probably set yourself back further. But boy, the pros feel like they outweigh the cons. And that's the part that as a fan and as the Blues, you have to sit there and decide, is it worth it?
Well, and also, too, if you're Alex Steen, and this is going to be one of your first big-ass deals as a general manager, you are flipping over every stone 8 times and finding out about that player, about his head, about everything. You know what he's eating for breakfast most mornings at that particular time.
Correct.
And I believe in Steen to be able to, determine whether, hey, man, this is a guy that we can shake out of Vancouver, bring here for a new lease on life, or the other side, this is maybe not somebody that we want to mess around with.
Correct. That's just the thing for me. And Steen is going to value hard work and that work ethic on the ice. You're not going to bring a guy in that doesn't have that. So if it doesn't happen, that tells you everything you need to know about Elias Pettersson.
Well, and also too, I mean, with this coaching staff and our new happy assistant coach, Greg Cronin.
He'll come in and love it. Right. But here's the thing too. Carolina was sniffing around Pettersson this past year. You think Carolina's going to take a chance on bringing that guy in? Now, they didn't, but I don't know if this was Pettersson didn't want to go there. I don't know if this was they were asking for too much at the time.
But when you're going into that locker room with Jordan Stahl and whomever else,
you're not wrong.
I would think that
you trust this, and Rod Brindamore, you trust the situation that you're in. But I'm just saying that team said, well, we could bring him in here and we could get him right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the Blues don't have that type of leadership, but how many times have we had drama in the locker room conversations about this team? People don't like Kyrou. People think Robert Thomas it turns into a head case, but it doesn't really seem like the exterior noise has gotten loud from the Blues of, oh, well, the locker room's a problem in the last couple of years, but maybe I'm wrong.
Real quick here, and we've talked about this just a little bit, but one of the teams in which that the Kyrou thing, one of the teams that he could potentially go to that's shown interest in the past is the Islanders. Mm-hmm. And do you think that Braden Shen being there would prohibit that from happening?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think teams go to players and ask them about trading for a guy other than the captains. And I don't know if Shen is that with the Islanders.
Right.
Maybe it does. Maybe Shen says, no, I don't think so. But I think if I'm the Islanders, I don't really care what Shen has to say, which may sound cruel, but you're gone in a year.
Yep.
I need offense.
Yeah.
And Kyrou with Barzal and Schaefer is very appealing to me, especially if I'm Pete DeBoer, who likes offense as much as you love Sourpuss.
It's just when I hear his name, I can see his face, and
that should make you feel happy though if Kyrou goes to play with them. Unless he turns him into a 50-goal scorer. Then he's like, damn it.
Exactly what I was thinking. Don't do anything to give this guy any more friggin' credit. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Let's come back. Blues make an organizational announcement over the course of the weekend. That's a big deal. And then we'll see if we can get an email in or two. Last Minute Blues podcast coming back for our final segment. All right, Mr. Ferrario. So it was announced on Saturday that the Blues have signed a deal with, I believe this is an ECHL affiliate in the Worcester Railers. Mm-hmm. All right. So, and I'm not trying to ask a dumb question, but is ECHL just like the AA of minor league hockey or single A of minor league hockey?
Yeah, I think it's probably the single A of minor league hockey.
Okay.
Like I think AA would be, AAA is without question the American Hockey League.
Right.
I think AA would be a combination of juniors, college, and overseas.
Okay.
Like I think that is just a higher level. Like guys go to the East Coast Hockey League when there's just not enough space on the AHL roster. So I just think competitiveness, it's just not where those other tiers are at. I mean, just look, for example, the Florida Everblades, the one that just won the championship in the East Coast Hockey League. That's the Blues affiliate, or was the Blues affiliate until this deal came up. That roster had 0 guys that were drafted from the Blues on it. So, like, I don't think the East Coast Hockey League is like the next step down from the AHL. It's where they go when they don't play at the AHL, but I think competitiveness is more like playing overseas in Europe or playing in college or juniors compared to the East Coast Hockey League.
So talk about why that this is a good deal and an important thing for the Blues.
I think the only reason they did this is because it's close to Springfield.
Okay.
I mean, that's where their AHL team is at, Springfield, Massachusetts. Worcester is in Massachusetts. So it's an easier path for guys that when there's not playing time in the AHL, you get to go straight to the East Coast Hockey League. Like, guy for the AHL for the Blues a couple of years ago, Marc-Andre Gaudette, he was playing in the East Coast Hockey League for the Blues because there wasn't enough space on the AHL roster to play on defense. So they wanted reps, they play him there, then they get him to the AHL when there's a time. So for the Blues, they've got a lot of defensemen under contract. My guess is guys that aren't going to juniors still and aren't on the AHL roster would go play for this. And it's an easier path from AHL to ECHL when they're in the same state rather than going to Florida and Massachusetts when you're trying to go back and forth with a lot of these guys.
Well, and organizationally, too, it's cheaper.
Yeah. That's probably the other thing, too.
Car ride or...
You're not paying for flights. You're not paying for all of this stuff. You're just driving to Worcester if you're not playing for Springfield.
We had even had an email about this not very long ago. It just seems like there's sort of consolidating power up in the Northeast, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think it's consolidating power as organizations, too, to keep things close. Like, look at Vegas. Vegas was with the San Antonio Rampage, and then they basically bought Henderson. Which is in Nevada.
Yep.
Like, I think a lot of these teams would prefer to have their AHLs close So the travel's there. Now, Massachusetts and St. Louis is not close.
Right.
But if you got the AHL and the ECHL close with each other and you're doing all of that travel on the East Coast, which is pretty tight, you're not spending as much money. So you're saving in certain areas for the business.
And you can get a direct flight from Boston to St. Louis and that sort of thing.
And you're not worried about, well, we've got this team here, we've got this team here, we're over here, and you're going to 5 different places. That's where it gets costly for organizations. So I think this was just more about consolidating and keeping things close so that you can operate accordingly with all of these teams.
It is Monday. It's about 10 o'clock. Do the Blues make a substantial move before the draft on Friday night at 7 o'clock?
I'm sticking with my gut, and I'm saying yes. There is a trade that they make that brings in an NHL player back before Friday. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's including an NHL player going the other way. I just cannot believe the Blues draft 3 players on Friday and run the roster back. I think there's going to be some type of move. And now for how loud the NHL is getting, and LeBron reported this today, like, get ready. Executives have said, be ready, because this is going to be a wild summer. We're already seeing it. I think you're going to see some type of move that the Blues are involved with. And for the people that say, well, their names aren't connected anywhere. Remember what happened at the deadline?
Oh, yeah.
Doug basically, had everybody turn their cell phones in because the Parayko stuff got leaked.
Yes.
I don't think anything's getting leaked from the Blues.
Well, I think like you, we both listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman, and Friedman even said a couple of episodes ago that he had somebody reach out from an organization to say we are going to go above and beyond what we've ever had before in trying to keep this stuff in-house as much as humanly possible. It's almost like all of these teams are going to go into lockdown or something along those lines to try to keep that information from getting out there.
Look at the Brady Tkachuk thing. Nobody saw that coming. That just happened.
Absolutely.
So I do think there's organizations that are trying to keep this quiet and private moving forward, and the Blues should be in front of that line because the Parayko thing that leaked and how upset Doug was about it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect to hear the Blues names attached to a lot of different teams or names because they're not going to let anything leak between now and the draft. But yes, I do think we're going to see some type of move that we're going to be talking about Friday when we open the show.
Man, and if you're a team like Carolina that just won the Cup and has cap room, saw what goes down with Florida, aren't you going to want to try to do something to kind of keep up with the Joneses, something along those lines?
If I'm Carolina, I throw all of the money at Bobrovsky. If I'm Carolina, I throw all the money at Bobrovsky. I know Brandon Bussey just won them the Stanley Cup. Bussey's not going to be expensive. Go get Bobrovsky. If I can convince Bobrovsky to take a 4-year deal and give him $10 million, my team's good.
Yeah, man.
I just give me a goaltender that I don't have to worry about all season, and I'm smooth sailing. Because remember, they still have the leading goal scorer in the American Hockey League, a first-round pick that they drafted. So, they're good. If I would go after Bobrovsky in a heartbeat if I'm Carolina.
All right. Friday night, 7 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Sorry.
7 Eastern.
Draft starts at 7, rather.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So we will be live on YouTube, and we are going to be there at Enterprise Center as that first round gets underway.
Yeah.
And we'll be there for whatever it is that's happening in that particular day. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're going to have instant reaction to everything. We are going to be live on 101 and YouTube. It's going to be you and me all night long. JR and Curbs are going to stop by throughout the night. They got other duties that they're doing, so they're going to drop by. But we've got some really fun guests too lined up. I think we're going to be joined by Chris Zimmerman, by Tom Stillman, by Jim Montgomery. We will have Doug Armstrong once the draft and the Blues picks have concluded. We're going to have audio of Tony Feltrin, who is the guy that's doing the scouting and doing the drafting for the Blues. But I also got a couple of guests lined up as well. I've got a prospect guru. His name's Anthony Donati, who is incredible. He's going to come on with us once the Blues make their selections to give us perspective on the guys. And I'm hoping to have Jeff Merrick join us at some point as well to get a little national perspective.
I don't know why I just made that statement after Jeff Merrick as opposed to when you said the Blues owner, the Blues coach.
Well, Jeff Merrick's got an arm sleeve, so that's what I do every time I see him too.
He just looks like a badass,
I
man.
love Jeff
love
Merrick.
listening to that guy,
I love
too.
Jeff Merrick.
Well,
So.
and also, too, with Jeff, there is just this very sort of common sense, I think, approach to the way that he looks at the game and what he talks about.
Yeah.
And therefore, it just makes it very easy as a layperson to understand and like to kind of understand where he's going with what it is that he's talking about.
For sure. He's one of my favorite national insiders, and I love the shows that he do. He's become a good friend to talk to with this stuff. So I'm excited for this, but it's going to be a really fun show. And I think the excitement surrounding St. Louis leading up to that draft is going to be at as high as it's been probably since they had that 10th overall pick when they selected Dalibor Dvorsky.
Man, oh man, fantastic. All right, so Last Minute Blues podcast, we're putting the wraps on this bad boy for this Monday. We're back again on Friday, and then I'm assuming we are back on our regular slot next Wednesday.
Yeah.
I had to mess
Free agency opens too by the time we're
July
back.
the 1st.
Opens on the 1st, so we will be. By the way, we're not talking about any free agent signings because I don't think they're going to be signing any free agents.
No.
But this is the prime time for hockey offseason, Donnie.
Man, just so much going on. I love it. I love it so much. All right, so we'll be back in your ears and in your eyeballs on Friday again at 6 o'clock for the draft. And again, Jeremy Rutherford, he's out on assignment today. For Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, I'm Donny Fandango. Thank you as always for listening and watching. And as always, let's go Blues.
Thanks for tuning into the Last Minute Blues podcast on your home for Blues hockey, 101 ESPN.